Good morning, guys. Going to be replacing the front pads and rotors on this 2006 Nissan X-Trail, also called the T30 in Europe, I believe. And I will not be doing the calipers today, just because these ones are in really good condition. I do have a video doing the rear calipers on this vehicle, the whole bleeding process, how to take them off. Very, very similar if you had to do the fronts. And today you'll actually see how to get them off and everything. So it'll be the whole thing, just short of taking the brake line hose off. But again, there's a video on doing the back ones if you need to take them off and do new calipers. So I got a few of the tools laid out here. Obviously there's the new rotor, new pads. I mean, you don't need the power tools here, but wrenches, good tool to have is the piston compressor right here. That's just a homemade brake bleeding tool. And actually, yeah, I should mention, this video is going to be a little different than the other ones on this vehicle in that I'm going to give you a tip on how to make your brake system last longer by making sure you don't push old fluid back into your master cylinder. So yeah, not too many tools here, but I mean, and you might not even need all these. So you got 22mm sockets, 14, definitely need those. A couple of wrenches here, 8mm wrench, that's a 19. You know, different size ratchets. You're gonna want some Loctite thread sealant, some anti-seize, just a little thing to hold brake fluid, a little bit of lubricating oil, .3 brake fluid. Obviously a light if you need it, or if you're outside, no worries, and just a wire brush I have there. So those are the tools I used to do this job, and little things will depend on, you know, how corroded everything is and that type of thing. So enough talk, let's get to it. Okay, so first step, just removing this lower slide pin bolt here. This is the 14mm. If for whatever reason you were just replacing your pads and didn't want to replace the rotor, you can actually just lift. Actually, I'm going to need to pry that. Just put a pry bar right here. You can just lift the whole caliper right up and replace your pads right here, compress your piston, and you'd be good to go. But we're going to replace the rotor, so we need to take this whole assembly off. So we'll put that back down, take this upper bolt off as well, and then we're going to hang the caliper so that doesn't put any strain on the brake line hose here. Okay, next you're going to get your long breaker bar here with the 22mm socket. I'm going to put it on your larger bolts here at the back. One up here. And we'll just remove this whole assembly, brake pads and everything. Okay, so I just wanted to show you guys this caliper bracket. It's in significantly worse condition than the other side. So these are slide pins. They're actually supposed to just come right out, and they allow the caliper to move with the pads as it wears down. So it should normally be like this, where you can just pull them out, and you know, and they have grease on them. And the new kit actually comes with the replaceable little grommet there for the upper one, and it also comes with a boot, and there should be grease on it so that, like I said, they can slide in and out. But this one is seized right in there, and that's what I have this 19mm wrench for. So I've just been heating it sort of like this, just to get the outside to expand, and and I cut the boot off already, throwing a little bit of penetrating lube. and then sort of just breaking it with a chisel. The 19mm wrench actually fits on here. Okay, so there it is. I got it out. And I mean, this one should be just as clean as this one with lots of grease on it. So we're gonna clean this all up. Make sure you clean the hole out really nice with some carb cleaner or brake cleaner. We're gonna run this over the wire wheel, make sure it's all nice, and then we're gonna grease it up well before we put it back in. Okay guys, so we're going to start the reassembly of the caliper holder here. So obviously our pads are going to come out. And these ones are very, very worn. Take these shims out. On where the shims sit so they go in nicely. And your new pads will come with these. Some shims here, so we're going to put them into place. And these just help your pads ride better. So obviously wouldn't be nice if they were riding on that rusty metal. So those are in. Next, so this is what your pins should look like when you take them out. So we're gonna remove that little rubber seal there on the end of the upper one. Yes, it's the upper one. And then we're gonna take this old boot off. I'm actually just gonna give that a quick clean because that's where you see this rust starts at the top and tries to work its way in. So I'll give that a quick clean. Okay, so I got that pretty cleaned. So it should be good. Threads are clean. Okay, so now we're gonna put the lower one in. We're gonna put some of this brake. This comes with most brake pad kits, but synthetic brake component lubricant. It's basically polybutyl cuprisol or something like that. Anyway, so we're gonna apply this to the shaft of this pin here, so that it slides freely all the time throughout the life of the brake pads. And we're gonna also make sure that this boot goes on as well. And make sure it seals up nicely so that you don't have the rusting issue again. So get a little bit of this going. Put a little bit up at the boot area first. We're going to slide our boot on, goes this way. This the one just sort of pops over there, makes a seal there. And then we're going to add more of this grease. Good amount. You want this very well lubricated. We're gonna a little bit of lube there, and then I'm just gonna squirt a little bit of oil because this little sort of seat here has to go right in and seat in the metal indent on the inside of this. And if it's not lubricated, it won't go in easily, or it won't seal at all, and then you'll have the rusting issue. So we're gonna put that in. We're gonna kind of push and twist it so that it gets right in there and seats in there. You can sort of help it a little bit with a screwdriver. Just be careful not to puncture the rubber. And then you'll know it's seated because it has just a nice seal all the way around and it doesn't try to come out. So, and see, it moves freely back and forth. It's exactly what you want. Okay, so the top one, cleaned off, it has that little rubber boot that goes on the end. Put that on. Same thing, we'll add our lubricant to the top of it. And guys, I know this video is a lot longer than the couple of the other ones. However, these are the real life situations you run into. It's not always just clean and easy to remove these bolts. In fact, rarely is it the case. So this is going to go over. Okay, so sometimes this is super tight in here. So I'm actually gonna remove this little boot. I'm gonna start it about halfway into its sort of home there, and then I'm gonna push this in behind it and make sure it goes back into the seat right there. And then that way you don't have any issues with it. Just gonna make sure it's seated. Yeah, it's right on there now, with it tearing or anything like that. So it's smooth, moving. Then we're just gonna make sure this boot seats in. Okay, there we go. So yeah, just gotta work it until it goes, moves freely. Okay, so here we're back to the vehicle. Take our rotor off. New rotor. And our caliper bracket. I've already put Loctite, blue Loctite on these threads. What the spec is, I don't exactly know, but just use common sense. Okay, now let's put our pads in. As it's rotating, so the vehicle's rotating like this, forwards. We're going to put the squealer at the top inboard if we only had one squealer. This one has two, so again at the top. Go. Now, this is going to be the cool tip here to make your brake system last longer. So we have to compress these pistons now on our, right here, on our caliper. And usually you can just push them in, but the fluid that's been in here, you know, doing lots of work, going in and out, collecting metal shavings, water, whatever, things like that, it gets pushed back towards the master cylinder in your lines, and you just don't want that. So a better way to do it, and to make it a lot easier to push these back, you're just going to crack your bleeder screw here. So we'll take the cap off. Now you only want to do this if they're in good condition, especially the bleeder screws, because if you break these off, you pretty well have to get a new caliper. These ones are in fair condition. I did the other side and it broke loose fairly easily, so we'll see how this side goes. So I'll crack it first before I try any compressing. Oh wow, you guys can't even see that. So there we go, a little closer. So crack that. Okay, that's good. So should see a little fluid coming out. There we go. So I'll just let that drip. And now we're going to get our compressor. And I've got the old inboard brake pad. So I'm going to slip it in where it was. And this will help us compress both at the same time, or sort of the same time. So you just have to get set up here so that this all fits in. So there we go there. We're going to tighten this down. And then I'm going to get my bucket. And then I'm going to start compressing the piston. I'll try to give you multiple views of this, but you should see brake fluid squirting out. And that's the fluid being compressed out of the piston. Instead of going back to the master cylinder, it's getting flushed out. And then we'll just bleed the system very quickly and we'll be good to go. So I'll show you from this angle here as we're compressing. It's compressing a little crooked here. So what I'll do, you just go very slow. So I'll loosen this and I'll move it to the lower one and it'll sort of even out everything. Oh, and then everything starts to fall apart. Real life. So okay, just continue compressing. And you got to compress them all the way in. These need to be totally flat to the piston. Just like that. Move our tool. Just going to tighten down our bleeder screw for now, just so we don't let any unnecessary air in. So I'll move you back here. And we're going to reinstall the caliper. So we're going to go over our pads. Make sure our pins are in the right spot. And reinstall our bolts. Okay, so those are tightened down and our boots are in the right spot. Everything's sealed up nicely. Okay, so all we have to do is just bleed the system. It shouldn't take much. So as you've seen in the rear brake video, hopefully, it's a little homemade brake bleeder, baby bottle, any type of bottle, hole in the top. Nice hose that fits nice over top of this bleeder screw here. So I'm just gonna hang it like so. I'm going to put it over the bleeder screw, make sure there's a nice tight seal, and then I'm going to crack it. The fluid coming out there. And all I'm going to do is get into the vehicle, pump the brakes, making sure my reservoir is filled with .3 brake fluid in the vehicle, just so I don't run out and cause a problem. And all I'm doing is just pumping the brakes slowly, not all the way to the floor, but about 3/4. Nice and slow, and then coming back. Pump a little more. And the idea is just to sort of obviously flush out the air bubbles so you get a nice firm pedal. But we're just trying to get some of that old fluid pumped through the lines. I've got some fresh stuff in the master cylinder there. And then we're just going to make sure we have nice, clean brake fluid. That should do it. So I'm just going to close my bleeder screw. just sealing all that fluid in there with no air, which is nice. Take off that, let it drain into the little cup, and we're going to tighten this down, and we're good to go. So that's all there is to it, guys. Just put your wheels back on, take it for a test drive, make sure there's no dragging sounds. Everything should move freely at this point. Because you know these pins are either new for you or they're greased up really well, everything should move nicely. And yeah, that's all there is to it. So if you got any questions, just leave them in the comments, please.